The Battlefield 6 open beta weekend is officially over, and after spending the last few days deep inside of Battlefield 6, I've got a lot to say. Today, I'm breaking down the good, the bad, and what we know so far about the game's future. Before we get into it, here's where I'm coming from. I built my first gaming PC in 2011 just to play Battlefield 3. I put over 500 hours into that game, and another 500 into Battlefield 4. I wouldn't call myself the most diehard Battlefield player, but even back then, I was making YouTube videos on Battlefield 3 and 4. And I still remember the excitement of coming home from school just to record more gameplay and upload it to my, 10 viewers. But as those games reached the end of their life cycles, my interest just completely faded. I drifted away from the franchise, I skipped most of the modern titles, and when I tried 2042, I uninstalled it before hitting 20 hours. So really, most of my Battlefield memories come from what a lot of people would consider the golden age of the series. And that's the perspective that I'm bringing into this breakdown, so keep that in mind. Let's start with what Battlefield 6 absolutely nailed in the beta. First, the Gunsmith point system. I'm a big fan of how this works. You get 100 points to spend, and every attachment has a set cost. The better the attachment, the more points it takes. That means that you can't just throw on every top tier option, and you have to make conscious choices. If I attach a really good barrel and foregrip for control, I might have to give up a larger magazine or faster ADS. I have to give something up. And that trade-off is where the depth really comes from. If the attachments are balanced right, then this system could hit the perfect mix of accessibility and complexity, making it ideal for theory crafting and optimization. Coming from older Battlefields, I remember movement being fluid but never slow or sluggish, and I believe that Battlefield 6 nails that balance. I'm not a fan of where a lot of shooters, especially Call of Duty, have gone with extreme movement. I think it takes away from the positioning and the timing aspect of shooters, so I'm glad to see a game dial that back while still adding modern touches like being able to lay on your side or on your back. This also ties into the reticle sway when jumping while aiming. I have heard plenty of complaints about it, but I see it as a positive. I don't want a game where I need to bunny hop around every corner to stay competitive. Battlefield 6 heavily penalizes that playstyle, which I think most players will appreciate. Some argue that it adds depth, but I completely disagree. When one movement tactic becomes the only viable option, then you're actually reducing the depth by removing the variety that you would find if there were other viable options. From everything that we have seen so far, the skins and the camos fit the Battlefield art style perfectly. They look grounded, believable, and consistent with the tone of the game. That might sound like a small thing, but for a lot of us, it's huge. In other shooters, it is easy for cosmetics to start breaking immersion. Bright and out-of-place skins can really make a serious match feel more like a theme park. Right now, Battlefield 6's approach feels like it respects the atmosphere of the game, and my hope here is that this stays true after launch, even as more cosmetics get added over time. We have all seen games that start grounded and slowly shift towards flashy, out-of-place designs. If Battlefield 6 can resist that and keep everything in line with its themed art direction, it's going to be a huge win for immersion. The Dragging as you revive mechanic is one of my favorite additions in Battlefield 6 right now. In most games, if you keep reviving teammates in a bad spot, they just get dropped again. Here, you can drag them to safety before actually finishing the revive, so you're not forced to leave them behind. There's also a little detail, it's a smart cooldown where if you get killed again shortly after being revived, you can't be revived right away. This is a simple quality of life change that prevents players from being stuck in an endless loop of deaths and revives just to farm points. The destruction in Battlefield 6 feels just right. You can open new paths and remove enemy cover in creative ways. Someone is hiding behind a wall, blow a hole in it. Someone camping in an attic, destroy the attic. At the same time, the main structure of a building stays intact, so there's always some kind of cover after heavy fighting. This kind of balance keeps the maps dynamic without letting vehicles steamroll entire areas and flattening them into empty open ground. This one might seem small, but it adds so much to the game for me, and that is that the reload animations save your progress. I've always been a fan of games that track your reload progress, and Battlefield 6 does it really well. When you run empty and you reload, your character inserts a new magazine and then pulls the charging handle to chamber a new round. In many other games, if you cancel the animation after inserting the magazine, but before pulling the charging handle, then the whole reload resets the next time that you try. This means that your character reinserts inserts the magazine that you were supposed to have already put in, and then tries to cycle the action. In Battlefield 6, that progress is saved. If you cancel early, the magazine stays in if you already put it in before canceling the animation. And the next chance that you get, your character just pulls the charging handle instead of repeating the whole progress. It's a small detail, but one I wish that more games had. And finally, the last really good thing that I want to mention is that the M18, which is based on the SIG P320, does not go off by itself in-game. Considering the real-world reputation of the P320, it's an achievement worth recognizing, and it deserves praise. But now let's talk about the things that I think could become real pain points for most players. These are issues that, if left unchecked, could hurt the game over time. First is the visibility. This is the biggest issue right now, I think. There's so much dust from destruction that it can completely block your view of enemies. On top of that, it doesn't always seem synced correctly. I've actually had moments where I couldn't see through the dust at all, but the enemy had a perfectly clear view of me. I didn't get to test it in a controlled way, but based on multiple deaths like that, it feels like there's just some client-side desync going on. There's also the brightness problem that if you're inside a dark building looking outside, enemies can get washed out by reflections and the sunlight, almost like your in-game eyes are adjusting to the light for some reason. It makes spotting targets inconsistent, and in a game where visibility can decide a fight in seconds, that's a real problem. Next is a hot topic in the community right now, where it really feels like the bloom during your longer bursts feel way overtuned. By the end of the magazine, it is like the weapon's MOA jumps into the 40s. I actually like bloom as a mechanic. It adds skill to controlling your fire, but in its current state, it ramps up so much that it starts to feel unnatural. Toning it down slightly and increasing the recoil a little bit would make sustained fire feel more intuitive without removing the need for controlled bursts. You're still going to have that skill gap. There's an interesting mechanic in the game, and right now getting one shot to the chest by a sniper, especially at ranges where you can't realistically fight back, feels kinda rough. I'm not as familiar with the newer Battlefield titles, so I haven't had as much experience with the sweet spot mechanic, but I believe that that's what's happening here. Whether it's ultimately a bad or a neutral mechanic is up for debate, but in its current form, it feels like a net negative for gameplay. Now, hip firing is way too strong right now, even without a laser attachment. I often found myself hip firing instead of ADSing at ranges where aiming should have been the better choice. I've even seen tips online recommending full hip fire builds for longer range fights, and the results look similar to firing after aiming down sights in terms of bullet trajectory once you factor in that ADS bloom. That level of accuracy without aiming feels overtuned and could probably throw off weapon balance. Now, this one is specifically about Liberation Peak in Breakthrough, where it just feels way too open. As an attacker, you start the match at a clear disadvantage in the first sector, especially with how strong sniping is right now. The combination of bullet trajectory bloom, almost no cover, and constantly being exposed to two different lines of sight in the right side of the map makes advancing extremely difficult. It ends up forcing most of the fighting to the left side of the map, where attackers can at least push without being instantly picked off, but that also means that half of the lobby turns into snipers, trading shots across the open ground on the right side, on both the attacker and the defending side. Adding some form of cover or blocking those long sight lines would go a long way towards improving the flow of Liberation Peak. Right now, the Gunsmith gives you no explanation for what each stat actually does, and even something as simple as a small eye icon you can hover over for a quick description would help a lot. Nothing complicated, just straightforward explanations like Hipfire decreases the size of your crosshair when not aiming down sights. It might seem unnecessary to experienced players, but for new players, that little bit of clarity can make a big difference when building weapons. Without it, you're left guessing how certain stats actually affect your gun's performance, which makes the system harder to fully take advantage of, especially for those newer players. Now, overall, the firing range is solid, there's plenty of space and a good setup for basic testing. But there's one small detail that I really wish would be addressed, and that is the lack of range customizability. It would be great to be able to move targets forward or backwards by just a couple of meters each to get the exact range measurements for weapon, especially when fine-tuning builds for specific engagement distances. Another odd detail is that the sweet spot mechanic doesn't seem to work inside of the firing range, which makes it hard harder to test certain weapons in realistic conditions. Adding both target adjustment and proper sweet spot functionality would make the firing range a quite a bit more useful tool for players. I saved this specific criticism for last because I know that I might get called crazy for it, but I swear, there is a feeling of mouse smoothing in Battlefield 6. Whenever I'm aiming or even hip firing, it's there, and no other game that I play has this feeling. It's like there's a slight resistance to my inputs. Maybe it's not actual smoothing, and it's just the first person aiming and weapon animations lagging behind my crosshair, but whatever it is, it throws me off. If it is animation related, then I really hope that they make those transitions snappier so that I don't feel like my character is lagging behind my input. And those are the issues that I see as the most important right now, but overall, the future of Battlefield 6 still looks really bright. There's already some important tweaks that the devs have confirmed. One is moving the respawn beacon from the Recon to the Assault class, which I think is a much better fit for their playstyle. They've also confirmed that a server browser is coming. We still need a little bit more detail on how that will work, but just knowing that it's in the plan is exciting, and we might even get to see it in the week 2 of testing. This Thursday, the 14th kicks off the weekend 2 of the open beta, and I'm curious to see what changes and adjustments they're actually going to roll out for us to test. If the full release sticks to the logic and design choices that we have seen in the open beta, then Battlefield might be back, and the mainstream FPS genre might be looking at a real comeback. I'm not getting my hopes up too high just yet. The Battlefield series has let us down before, but if they pull it off, it could be a wake-up call that the rest of the shooter industry really needs. And yes, Call of Duty, I'm looking specifically at you.